Please leave. Just leave.
The entire restaurant went silent the moment the convoy of black SUVs screeched to a stop outside. Doors slammed in perfect unison. Heavy boots hit the pavement. Then the glass door swung open, and the most feared man in the city stepped inside like he owned the air itself. Every fork stopped moving. Every conversation died. 6 men in dark suits fanned out behind him, scanning the room like predators counting prey. His eyes swept across the tables until they landed on 2 faces behind the counter, identical faces, both frozen mid-motion, one holding a plate, the other holding a rag she had forgotten she was using to wipe the same spot for the last 10 seconds. He walked straight toward them, slow, deliberate, every step echoing through the silence. Then he said the words that would shatter their world. "I have come to ask for the hands of these 2 women in marriage." Gasps rippled through the room. A spoon clattered to the floor. Someone's phone slipped out of their hand. The twins stared at him in disbelief, neither one able to speak. But what happened in the weeks that followed would change all 3 of their lives forever, and reveal a secret darker and stranger than anyone in that restaurant could have imagined. If you love stories with danger, romance, and twists you won't see coming, hit that subscribe button right now, because this one is going to take you somewhere unforgettable. Drop a comment telling me which twin you think he really wants, Amara or Amaya, because trust me, even they didn't know the answer yet. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Amara and Amaya had run Golden Lotus, a small family restaurant on the corner of a quiet street, for almost 3 years. They were twins in every sense, same dark eyes, same easy laugh, same stubborn refusal to give up even when the world gave them every reason to. But anyone who knew them well could tell them apart in seconds. Amara was the gentle one, soft-spoken, the one who remembered every regular customer's birthday and slipped extra rice onto the plates of families who couldn't afford much. Amaya was the fire, sharp-tongued, quick to anger, the one who chased off drunks twice her size without blinking. They had inherited the restaurant from their parents, who died in a car accident 4 years earlier on a rain-soaked highway, leaving the sisters with nothing but a small kitchen, a stack of unpaid bills, and each other. Since that night, they had been inseparable. They shared one apartment above the restaurant, one bank account, and one dream to expand Golden Lotus into something bigger, something their parents would have been proud of. 5 more years, Amara used to say, flipping through a notebook full of sketches for a second location. 5 more years, and we open another one across town. 5 years, Amaya would laugh, if the landlord doesn't kick us out first. It wasn't an easy life. The restaurant barely broke even some months. Local debt collectors circled like vultures whenever rent was late. A group of small-time thugs had taken to protecting the block, which really meant demanding a cut of the day's earnings just to leave the windows unbroken. The sisters paid because they had no choice. They smiled at customers by day and counted coins by candlelight at night, terrified of what would happen if they ever came up short. But they never let it show. To everyone who walked through that door, Golden Lotus felt like home, warm broth, warmer smiles, 2 sisters who treated strangers like family. Until the night the black SUVs arrived. Kang Min-Jae was a name that made grown men lower their voices. He ran the largest crime syndicate in the city, an empire built on smuggling routes, underground casinos, and a reputation so terrifying that rival bosses avoided his territory altogether. People said he had once walked into a room of 40 armed men and walked out alone, the room behind him in ruins. People said he never raised his voice because he never needed to. Fear did the talking for him. People said he had no heart, no weakness, nothing that could be used against him. He was young for his position, only 32, with sharp features, a tailored black coat, and a stillness about him that unsettled everyone who met him. He didn't smile. He didn't blink first. And until that night, no one had ever heard him ask for anything. He simply took what he wanted. So when his convoy stopped outside a tiny family restaurant nobody important had ever heard of, whispers spread through the underworld within hours. Why would the most powerful man in the city care about a place like Golden Lotus? The answer walked through the door wearing his calm, unreadable expression, flanked by men who looked ready to kill anyone who so much as raised their voice. He stopped a few feet from the counter, studying both sisters with an intensity that made the air feel thinner. "One of you," he said quietly, "has captured my heart. Until I discover which one, I will not leave." The room held its breath. Amara's hands trembled around the plate she was holding. Amaya stepped forward, chin lifted, refusing to let fear show. "Get out," she said. "We don't know you. We don't want anything from you." A flicker of something, amusement, maybe, crossed his face before vanishing. "That," he said, "is exactly why I'm interested. If this story is already giving you chills, smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and I promise the next part gets even more intense." He turned and walked out as calmly as he had entered, his men following in formation, leaving behind a restaurant full of stunned customers and two sisters whose hearts were pounding for very different reasons. "Absolutely not," Amaya said the moment the door closed. "Whatever that was, we are not getting involved." "Obviously," Amara whispered, though her eyes lingered on the window a second too long, watching the SUVs pull away into the night. For 3 days, nothing happened. The sisters convinced themselves it had been a strange, isolated incident, maybe a drunken dare, maybe a rival trying to embarrass him. Life returned to its usual rhythm: morning prep, lunch rush, evening cleanup, counting coins under candlelight. Then the strange things began. On the 4th day, the local debt collector who had been hounding them for months suddenly stopped calling. When Amaya finally tracked him down to ask why, he went pale and stammered that the debt had already been handled before practically running away. On the 6th day, the group of thugs who extorted protection money from every shop on the block didn't show up. They never came back. A neighboring shop owner later told them, in a hushed voice, that the thugs had been seen leaving town in a hurry, looking like they'd seen a ghost. On the 9th day, a wealthy businessman walked into Golden Lotus, ordered an enormous amount of food for an event, paid triple the price without blinking, and left before the sisters could even ask his name. Business, which had been struggling for years, suddenly began to flourish. Bills were paid. The kitchen got new equipment neither sister remembered ordering. A line formed outside the door for the first time in the restaurant's history. "Something is wrong," Amaya said one night, staring at a kitchen invoice marked paid in full, no balance in handwriting that wasn't theirs. "None of this is normal." "Maybe we're finally just getting lucky," Amara offered, though even she didn't believe it. "We don't get lucky," Amaya snapped. "We get problems. This is a problem wearing a nice mask." Deep down, both sisters suspected the truth, even if neither wanted to say his name out loud. Who was helping them, and why? If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure you're subscribed, because the truth the sisters are about to uncover is far more painful and far more dangerous than either of them expected. It was Amaya who finally found the answer, 3 weeks after the first encounter. She had grown suspicious enough to follow one of the businessmen who'd overpaid for an event that never seemed to exist. She tracked him to a quiet office downtown, only to overhear him on the phone, nervously confirming a payment had been made, exactly as Mr. Kang instructed. She stormed back to the restaurant, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. "It's him," she said breathlessly. "Kang Min-Jae. He's been paying off our debts. He scared off the thugs. He's been sending people to buy food we don't even cook to keep us afloat." Amara's hands stilled over the dishes she was washing. "Why would he do that?" "I don't know," Amaya said, "but I'm going to find out." They didn't have to look far. That same evening, a single black car pulled up outside, and Min-Jae stepped out alone this time, no army of men behind him, no SUVs blocking the street. He looked almost human standing there in the dim light, hands in his coat pockets, waiting to be let in or turned away. Amaya crossed her arms in the doorway. "You've been interfering in our lives. Why?" "I told you why," he said simply. "One of you has captured my heart." "That's not an answer. That's a riddle. We are real people, not prizes to be won." For the first time, Something shifted behind his eyes, not anger, but exhaustion, old and deep. "You're right," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, may I explain?" Against her better judgment, Amaya let him in. He told them about a childhood torn apart when his family was destroyed by a rival gang, his father killed, his mother forced into hiding, himself recruited at 15 into the very organization that had orphaned him, because it was the only way to survive in a city that offered him nothing else. He told them how he rose through the ranks not out of ambition, but out of necessity, becoming exactly the kind of monster he once feared, because gentleness in his world meant death. "I built an empire," he said, staring at his own hands, "and I have never once felt like it belonged to me." He told them that the first time he saw them, months earlier, passing by the restaurant on an unrelated matter, he had watched Amara give free food to a homeless old man without hesitation, and watched Amaya chase off a customer who tried to grope one of the waitresses without fear for her own safety. Something about their warmth, their fire, their refusal to be anything other than themselves in a world that punished softness, had cracked something open in him that he thought had died years ago. "I don't expect either of you to love me," he said. "I only wanted to protect what felt real for once." Amara's expression softened as she listened, her eyes glistening. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." Amaya, however, remained rigid, arms still crossed. "Sad story or not, you're still a criminal. People fear your name for a reason. Helping us doesn't erase that." "No," he agreed, "it doesn't." The tension between the sisters grew sharper after that night. Amara found herself defending him in quiet moments, reminding Amaya that pain didn't excuse cruelty, but it did explain it. Amaya refused to soften, certain that trusting a man like Kang Min-Jae was the fastest way to lose everything they had worked for. "You're falling for him," Amaya accused one night. "And you're terrified of feeling anything," Amara shot back. "We are allowed to feel something, Amaya. We've been alone since Mom and Dad died. Maybe it's okay to let someone in." Not someone like him. For the first time in their lives, the twins who had never kept a single secret from each other began sleeping in separate rooms. This is the part where the story takes a dark turn, so if you haven't already, hit subscribe and comment your prediction below, because what happens next changes everything. Word of Kang Min-Jae's unusual obsession with two ordinary sisters eventually reached the ears of his rivals. Specifically, a rising syndicate led by a ruthless man named Director Cho, who had spent years searching for any crack in Min-Jae's armor. For the first time, he had found one. "Everyone has a weakness," Cho reportedly told his men. "His just happens to wear an apron." Late one night, while Amaya was closing up the restaurant alone, Amara had gone upstairs early after another argument. 3 black vans pulled up outside. No warning, no hesitation. Men in masks broke through the back door before she could even scream. She fought, knocking one man into a shelf of dishes, but there were too many of them. A cloth soaked in something sharp-smelling was pressed over her face, and the world went dark. Amara woke to the sound of crashing furniture and ran downstairs just in time to see her sister being dragged into a van, her muffled scream cutting off as the doors slammed shut. Amara screamed Amaya's name into the empty street until her voice broke, but the vans were already gone, taillights disappearing into the night. She was alone in the wreckage of the restaurant, glass and broken plates scattered across the floor when her phone rang. An unknown number. Trembling, she answered. A cold, unfamiliar voice spoke through static. "Tell Kang Min-Jae if he wants to see them alive again, he comes alone. No men, no weapons, the old shipyard, 1 hour. If he's late, if he calls the police, he gets pieces back, not people." The line went dead. Amara realized in that moment that the call hadn't said her. It had said them. She wasn't safe either, they had taken Amaya, but they were watching the restaurant, waiting to see who else they could use as leverage. She called Min-Jae with shaking hands, barely able to form words through her panic. "They took Amaya," she sobbed. They said you have to come alone or they'll kill her." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Min-Jae finally spoke, his voice had changed completely. No longer calm, no longer controlled, but raw with something that sounded almost like fear. "I'm coming," he said. "Stay where you are, lock every door. I will not let anything happen to either of you." Before you find out what happens at the shipyard, take 10 seconds to like this video and drop a comment. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps this story reach more people who need a good cliffhanger in their life. Kang Min-Jae arrived at the abandoned shipyard exactly 58 minutes later, alone, his coat whipping in the wind, his hands empty, his expression carved from stone. Floodlights from rusted cranes cast long shadows across the concrete as Director Cho stepped out from behind a shipping container, flanked by a dozen armed men. Amaya was on her knees nearby, hands bound, a bruise forming along her jaw, but her eyes burned with defiant fury rather than fear. "You actually came," Cho said, almost amused. "Alone, no less. I didn't think the great Kang Min-Jae had it in him to care about anyone." "Let her go," Min-Jae said. "This is between us. She has nothing to do with our history." "Oh, but she does now," Cho said. "Because you made her matter to you, and anything that matters to you matters to me." "Name your price." Cho smiled coldly. "Your empire. Sign it over, every route, every account, every man loyal to you, and walk away with nothing. Do that, and I'll let your little restaurant girl go." Min-Jae didn't hesitate. "Done." "Min-Jae, don't," Amaya shouted, struggling against the men holding her. "Don't you dare give him everything for me." "It's already done," Min-Jae said quietly, never taking his eyes off Cho. "Everything I built was never worth anything to me until I had something worth losing it for." Papers were produced. Cho had planned this meticulously, prepared for exactly this outcome. Min-Jae signed without a flicker of hesitation, surrendering control of an empire he had spent his entire adult life building, piece by piece, in a few strokes of a pen. But the moment the documents were signed, Cho's smile turned sharp and cruel. "You really are a fool," he said. "Did you think I'd actually let either of you walk away? Loose ends get cut. That's how this business works. You taught me that yourself years ago." He raised a hand, and his men leveled their weapons. What Cho didn't know was that Min-Jae's loyal men, the ones who had served him for over a decade, the ones whose families he had protected, whose debts he had quietly paid, whose loyalty had never been bought, only earned, had been tracking his movements the entire time, waiting at the edges of the shipyard for exactly this moment. Gunfire erupted. Chaos exploded across the dock as Min-Jae's men stormed in from the shadows, overwhelming Cho's forces in a violent, desperate clash. Min-Jae lunged toward Amaya, shielding her body with his own as bullets tore through metal containers around them, dragging her behind cover as the firefight raged on. "Why would you do that?" Amaya gasped, clutching his arm as he pulled her to safety. "You gave up everything, your entire empire, for me." "It was never an empire," he said, breathing hard, blood from a graze wound darkening his sleeve. "It was a cage. You and your sister are the first real thing I've had in 15 years. In the confusion, Cho attempted to flee toward a waiting car, but Min-Jae's men cut him off, and within minutes, the man who had orchestrated the entire kidnapping was on his knees, disarmed, his own small empire collapsing as rapidly as it had risen. The danger was over, but everything Min-Jae had built gone in the space of a single terrifying hour. "We're almost at the end, but I promise the final twist is worth the wait. If you've made it this far, you clearly love a good story, so subscribe now so you don't miss the next one." In the weeks that followed, the underworld Kang Min-Jae once ruled fractured and scattered without a leader to hold it together. Rather than disappearing or attempting to rebuild from the shadows, Min-Jae did something no one in his world had ever done before. He turned himself in. He walked into the central police headquarters alone, calmly, the same stillness in his posture that had once terrified rivals across the city, and confessed to years of criminal activity. More than that, he handed over evidence, meticulous records of corrupt officials, rival operations, smuggling routes, financial networks, enough information to dismantle large portions of organized crime across the region for years to come. "Why confess?" a stunned detective reportedly asked him during questioning. "You could have disappeared. You had the resources. Because for the first time in my life, Min-Jae answered, I wanted to be someone worth waiting for, not someone worth fearing. His cooperation significantly reduced his sentence, but it did not erase it. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, a fraction of what his crimes might have otherwise warranted, but still 8 years stolen from a life he had only just begun learning how to want. Amara and Amaya visited him exactly twice before his transfer to a federal facility outside the city. The first visit was tense, full of unspoken questions neither sister was ready to ask. The second visit, only Amara came alone. She sat across from him at the visitation table, hands folded, eyes steady. Amaya isn't coming back, she said softly. Not because she doesn't care, she's still angry, still scared of what almost happened to her, but she told me something before I left. What did she say? She said she knows now which one of us you were really looking for all along, and she said it's all right. She's already found someone of her own, someone uncomplicated, someone who doesn't come with a war behind him. Min-Jae looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable softening behind his eyes. And you? I'll wait, Amara said simply. 8 years isn't forever, and I think you're worth waiting for too. Quick reminder before we finish, if this story moved you even a little, leave a comment letting me know which moment hit hardest. It helps more than you'd think, and I read every single one. 8 years passed. Golden Lotus expanded, exactly as the sisters had once dreamed, into a small chain with 3 locations across the city, run now mostly by Amaya, who had grown into a sharp, capable businesswoman with a fierce protective streak over everything she had built. She had indeed found someone of her own, a quiet, steady man who ran a bookstore 2 streets over, someone whose life had never once involved a single gunshot. Amara never married anyone else. She visited the prison every single month without missing once, watching the man across the table change, calmer, gentler. The hardness in his eyes slowly replaced by something close to peace, as if 8 years had finally given him room to become the person he might have been if his family had never been destroyed. On the day of his release, Amara stood outside the gates alone, exactly as she had stood outside the restaurant the night his convoy first arrived. No black SUVs this time, no men in suits, just an ordinary taxi and an ordinary man in plain clothes stepping out of a prison that no longer owned him. He saw her standing there, and for the first time since the night he had walked into Golden Lotus and changed everything, he smiled, not the calculated half-smile of a man calculating leverage, but something real, something earned. You waited, he said. I told you I would, Amara replied, her eyes filling with years of patience finally rewarded. He crossed the distance between them and took her hands, gently this time, nothing like the cold demand he had made years earlier in front of a stunned restaurant full of strangers. I once told 2 sisters I would not leave until I discovered which one had captured my heart, he said quietly. I think I finally have my answer. You always did, Amara whispered. You were just too afraid to admit it might be something you didn't have to take by force. Sometimes the most feared man in the room is simply a broken man searching for a second chance. And sometimes the bravest thing he can do isn't conquering an empire, but learning how to be loved. If this story kept you hooked until the very last word, make sure you're subscribed for more stories just like this one. Drop a like to support the channel, and tell me in the comments what you'd want to see next.
Raffine. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe, like, and comment below. And I'll see you in the next unforgettable story.